Hi everybody, I hope you're having an amazing week. I'm Brian Roma with PKI Solutions, and this is Minding the Key Store, the YouTube channel that covers all things PKI. And today we've got another installment of The Vault. This episode comes from May of 2020. It's an interview with Ted Shorter, the CTO of Keyfactor, where they dig into what brought Ted to this point in his career journey, what kinds of things Keyfactor is focusing on as of last year, and the relationship, some of the nuances, the relationship between PKI Solutions and Keyfactor. So I hope you enjoy this. I just want to thank all of you. The channel's off to an amazing start. We've had a really good response so far. We should have a custom URL, a custom address for the channel in the next few days. So we're very excited about that. And if you have found the episodes we've shared so far, or if you think that this particular replay of Office Hours is especially helpful, please do all of the YouTube things. Subscribe to the channel, like the episode, share it, hit the bell notification to make sure that you know when new content comes out, and that way when we do things like go live, you'll get notified, or when a new episode gets scheduled and gets staged to get put up on the channel, you know it's coming. So without further ado, here is Ted Shorter with Keyfactor and Office Hours from May of 2020.
Well, hello. Welcome to the May edition of Office Hours. I see everyone is getting their way in now. Welcome back. I see some familiar names. Kevin, Richard, you guys are making regulars of coming to this, so thanks for stopping by. We got Jake joining us here in momentarily. We got Vadims as well. So welcome back to Office Hours. I promise no slide decks, no pre-canned content, just a waste of time to talk PKI. We've got a few topics to go through. As always, this is all about your questions, anything that you've got pressing. Submit your questions. You can chat amongst yourselves in the public channel. Andy's going to be doing some triaging of questions. So if you've come prepared with some questions, pop over to the Q&A tab. You can get them posted there. Otherwise, we're just going to geek out and talk PKI for a little while. So this is now our second edition of Office Hours, and this was really started as our way of helping people who are working with PKI, perhaps having some challenges or questions that they have, and really giving you a forum you can come and chat a little bit. Couple of things I thought I'd throw out there before I let our esteemed panel introduce themselves and say hello. A couple of thoughts for questions. If you didn't come with something already, love to hear what, if any, kind of issues people are running into as a result of the shelter in place. I know we've been talking a little bit about planning for PKI related issues for offline systems. So as we're coming up on root CAs and HSMs and what some of those challenges are going to be in publishing CRLs and so forth down the road, are there adequate safety precautions you're able to take? Are you skipping things? Are you going into some challenges? And also would love to hear what kind of challenges or new uses that you have for PKI in the last couple of months that perhaps you didn't have before. So we'll let that kind of resonate to you for a little bit. Jake, you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks. Jake Grandlienard, and I've been with PKI Solutions now for a little over a year. I've been doing PKI for a long time, 15 years, something like that. I'm also watching as people join. I'm seeing some names that in our field, it's the same people. We just all kind of move around. I just saw.
Yeah, it's a small little family. Yeah, it's a little family.
Long time ago. So, yeah, I think everyone's just staying busy. I think you'll see that we're all looking a little different. I have a stay-at-home beard going.
Yes. And you're looking skinnier. I hear when you grow a beard, it makes you look skinnier and more intelligent, perhaps.
Red Bull, so
yeah,
we're
exactly.
all good there.
Yes. And Vadims, you want to say hello?
Hi, guys.
A man of many words, as always. So, I think probably the best thing I can do is make people feel awkward and put them on the spot. So a little bit of trivia. If you haven't had the pleasure of working with Jake before, he pretty much runs on Little Debbie donuts and Red Bull. There's kind of the rumor that like circus elephants only like peanuts. Jake only lives on Little Debbie donuts and Red Bull.
That's what I get if I do a good job with Mark. Amazon Ferry delivers Red Bull to me. So
sometimes it's Costco. Sometimes it's just a case of Red Bull coming from Costco. So it could be lots of different things. Couple of updates from our end before we get started a little bit today. We have a new team member that joined us a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully he'll be making an appearance at our next office hours. Nahid Javani is recently with us as a new senior consultant based out of Los Angeles. So we figured we'll let him come see one of these in action before we put him on the spot and have him start answering questions. We also launched our advanced ADCS training course online. So we've been delivering this for several years as the follow-on to the in-depth class, but it's now available online. I hear people are at home and looking for things to do, and training is a great way to do that. So it just so happened we started this 6 months ago, and we wound up having it available just a couple of weeks ago. If you haven't already seen, I've actually been blown away by this one. We are now making part of our PKI in-depth class free. Our trial has now 160 people that have signed up for our PKI in-depth trial class just in the last 7 days. So if you're one of those, thanks for coming to check it out. So we're really happy about that. Where I thought we'd start is we actually had a really interesting issue that came up for one of our customers. And I thought maybe Jake and we could spend a couple of minutes just giving you an interesting scenario we ran into. And obviously, Jake, we're not going to share any private details here. But we had a customer that ran into a really interesting PKI issue. And it's certainly something that could easily manifest itself in other environments. You want to kind of give a little background on what we saw and how we got involved, Jake?
Sure. So I guess it's been about a month ago, a little less. We got a support ticket that was open. Basically, that the environment was down at our client. So we joined a call and we started looking, and we saw that we were getting messages basically where the CA couldn't get to its database, and they were using HSMs. However, all the communications when we were running them looked okay, going back and forth to the HSM. So we started gathering logs, and the client ended up just rebooting everything, and it seemed to clear it up. So I was actually going through the logs trying to do a root cause, and then maybe within an hour, another like severe, hey, help me, things are down. So we joined again, and everything had gone down again. So another reboot, things came back up again. But as we started to go through the logs, come to find out that the servers were supposed to be excluded from some updates, and someone accidentally included these servers in the scope. And a Tanium client that was quite old, had been out for over a year, was updated on the clients, and it broke the communications with our HSM. So really digging through those logs and trying to find that, especially when the client had said, we're not doing Windows Update, we use a third-party product, and finding that and figuring out that was the root cause. We actually were a little concerned at first that maybe it wasn't an intentional thing. Luckily, it was, and the break fix was just to make sure that those were excluded. But it was a lot of log digging, and a lot of tense exchanges, just trying to get the environment back up, because everyone's remote, and it was keeping people from being able to connect remotely.
Yeah. And Jake, I just saw a comment. Put your mic just a little bit closer. I think you're just a little faint. And I think what was really interesting on this one is the fact that when we went to look at the HSMs, they were healthy, they were running. We could do the inquiry. They were inside for HSM. So everything looked perfectly normal. And with the reboot, that the problem went away. But it wasn't until we really started the root cause analysis, looking through the logs, that essentially what was happening was the Tanium discovery module. So it helps with the asset inventory. it deploys the MtKS driver, which is basically a packet capture driver. And what happened is when the module was deployed through Tanium, it disrupted the network communication between the server and the HSM, and it didn't recover. And what we essentially could see is there's a event ID whenever a service is installed. So luckily it's a kernel level service. We could see the event ID, and we saw a perfectly healthy set of CA event IDs through the event log. We could then see that Tanium module installed with the MtKS driver, and the service started, and then nothing but bad entries for the CA in trying to issue certificates and publish the certificates. So the installation of the MtKS driver really caused a problem. So the reason that this came up is this Tanium discovery module has been out for a while, but in this case, as Jake said, the CAs were supposed to be excluded. Somehow they got included. The module got pushed out. It would work perfectly fine if it had been planned and we knew the install was going to happen, but because it was unintentionally included, that installation of the driver disrupted the communication. So I think what is an important takeaway here is anything that potentially affects the communication from the CA to the HSM, even if it's transitory, like an MtKS driver being installed, it really could cause some long-term effects. So once we were able to reboot and identify it, there was a few embarrassed people on the customer side, but at one point we were a little concerned it was a security compromise, right?
Yeah.
So,
that was
before we knew Tanium was involved, just strangely seeing MtKS driver being installed when it shouldn't, and kernel level things being done, it is a little concerning at first. So luckily we were able to track that down. So if you're using Tanium or other types of asset systems out there that could potentially be pushed out to your CAs, and you have HSMs involved, it could lead to these same types of disruptions that are out there. So we'll probably be writing up a blog on this in the future. So yeah, thought that would be a good one for us to pass along. So I know we've got some questions that have been brewing in. I know we got some ahead of time. So let's start with one of these. I think we've got a question from John Bryant, and I think we're going to go over to John and see if he can come on and share it. So let me go over to John here. All right, John, you should be able to share your camera and come online and ask your question here. And thanks for everyone that's submitted their questions ahead of time. We've got those. We will be getting to them. We've got questions from Heather and John as well. And if John Bryant comes in, we'll get his question here. All righty. Well, let me go ahead and read the question while it looks like John's coming on. Hey, John, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. Welcome, John. How are you? Well, great. Well, thanks for joining us. I know you had a question. Why don't you shoot away and we'll figure out who in the panel can help you out.
Well, without giving too much away, we are using Citrix Federated Authentication Services. I don't know how familiar you are with those for a rather extremely large client, and we will be issuing probably 30, 40,000 certificates a day. Again, not a big deal for a CA to handle, but I'm curious as to if or how the industry is viewing Citrix Federated Authentication and the architecture of PKI. Are they dedicating PKI issuing CAs to the Federated Authentication Services because you can target the CAs and thus hold like a complete life cycle between Federated Authentication and CAs, and then when you have to do upgrades or versioning code changes, you would just spin up a whole new infrastructure and switch over to that because the certificate for federated authentication is a very short-term one. It's 2-3 days.
Yeah. And then is any of this externally facing, like in a DMZ, or is it all internal in the network?
This is 100% internal.
Okay. So I don't know, Jake, how would you approach this? So we've got a kind of a purpose-built identity thing, whether it's Citrix or something else. Now, do we dedicate a CA to it? Do we keep it separate? What's your approach to this? Well, Jake, you just went mute on us.
That better?
Yeah, there you go.
All right, sorry about that. The dog was barking earlier. So I've done both, and usually what it comes down to is more preference around trying to keep the certificates, separate from others being issued. So I had a time in the past where we were issuing a lot of certificates to mobile devices, and we chose to, or the client chose to keep those on separate infrastructure. That way, it could be a little more accommodating to the purpose. So that was kind of the way we went with that one. 30,000 a day, and it's short lived. That's going to get larger. And then I would also just look and see some of the other things, like how long are we going to want to do our revocation checking. It's going to be really quick. So if we put that on a separate CA, then we can really dial in the configuration for the specific purpose. Whereas if we host that on one of our CAs that is kind of more of a general purpose, then it's a little bit harder to set a bar and make everyone be able to get over that bar.
Yeah. And John, was it 30,000 certs a day? Or just in total?
Oh, no. Of course, it depends on when they're renewing, but
sure. Yeah,
it could be anywhere between 30 to 60,000 a day.
Okay, but they're short lived. So
yeah.
So I think one of the deciding factors for me would be the fact that because they're short lived, there may be certain things that we want to do because of that. So, for instance, we may say we don't even want a record of those in our CA database. And that's configurable at a template level where we can say these short-lived things, I'm never going to revoke them. Why would I add them to my database? If that's the only mitigating thing I could do, I could technically use my existing CA to do that. And on that short-lived thing on the template, say, don't store. On the other hand, I may say, I do want to do it, but because they're short-lived, if my CA normally creates a CRL once a week, it's not going to do much value for my short-lived certs. So maybe I do want a separate CA for those short-lived certificates, and it's creating a CRL every 6 hours. And that way it's only doing these short-lived things. If there is an issue, there's a CRL that's pretty frequent. I can actually affect these certificates in a short term. And the earlier point I was asking about the DMZ is, certainly if we're doing things that are external and we're having to expose some of the issuance things, then we may want a separate CA that was involved there. And obviously in your case, it's all internal. So I think you've got options on how you can go about doing these things based on whether it's going to be internal or external. So I think from a quantity standpoint, certainly not going to be too high of an issue, but probably from a management standpoint, it certainly wouldn't hurt to have a dedicated CA, but certainly isn't going to be necessary. Yeah. Well, thanks, John. Appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. Excellent. Well, I think we've got a few other questions that are coming along here. So let me pop over there. We've got some questions sitting there. Let's see what we've got here. All right. Vadims, I think your camera's off, but I think you're still with us there. Is that right? I can hear him. All right. Maybe they'll come back. We got some connectivity challenges there. All right, Jake, I'll throw this one over to you. We've got a question that came in from Scott, and he said, if I publish a CRL on January 1st and then the CDP breaks and I can't issue another CRL after, then will the published CRL have a lifetime, and will the service, which is dependent on the CRL, continue operating as normal? Let's try to pull that one apart.
So we've published a CRL, and it was up for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume, depending on where that location was, that the clients were able to actually download it. So as long as it's still valid, the clients shouldn't need another copy of it until it gets ready to expire. And obviously, new clients wouldn't be able to get it. But the clients that already had it have no reason to go back and won't go back until it's time for it to be renewed. So you would be okay until you get close to the time when your CRL is getting ready to expire, and then there will be problems.
Yeah. And I think that there may be a little bit of uncertainty there in that if you published a CRL on January 1st, when did it break? If it was 5 minutes after you published a CRL, no one may have actually come along and gotten a chance to pick it up, and we may actually be in a state where no one has it cached. But if it's been there for a little while and systems have cached it, they'll certainly be able to continue to function and be able to use that cached revocation information, application dependent, OS dependent. But for the most part, it doesn't have to be there if systems already have it cached.
Right. Net new would need, obviously. Yeah,
exactly. And you may be faced a little bit with the challenge of who's got it. So if that CDP site goes down, you may go, okay, are we okay? Are we not okay? You wouldn't necessarily know who's retrieved it. And then we almost kind of have a can of worms of will systems even care? Do they check CRLs? They may check the CRL if it's there. Like many of the browsers for years were doing soft CRL checking, meaning they would check the CRL, but if they couldn't find it, they wouldn't care. They would just continue on. They only cared if they found it and something was revoked, and then they would do something. And if it wasn't there, they don't care. So sometimes from a design standpoint, we have to make some assumptions. Oh, excellent. Thanks, Scott. Let's see what else we've got. I'm going to take one of the questions that we received ahead of time. This one, I love this topic. And I know we've written about this on the blog before, and I certainly have my opinions on this. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but Heather asks, I've been asked to create a subordinate CA so that a Palo Alto appliance can decrypt traffic on the firewall. It wants to be a subordinate CA so it can create it on the fly. Really, I think there's probably two things that we can touch on here is Jake, your thoughts around creating subordinate CAs for these TLS inspection appliances.
Right.
And then I'll address the second part of Heather's question about how that's really working.
Okay. Yeah. So most of the time, if you follow the vendor's directions or guidance that I've been a part of, the answer is the shortest path possible to get that certificate. So they would probably have you just stand up a CA, publish and issue them a subordinate a template a subordinate template, and issue them that certificate. So I always equate that to a company giving their a signed check to someone that they can just fill in the amount, because what then happens is that that decryption appliance has all the trust of your normal PKI and your CA. So every certificate it issues has the full weight of your PKI. And then to take it a step further, even if an environment, and I've seen this before as well, where we have a guidance that it needs to be protected, our private keys are protected on our HSMs. Most of those appliances are able to be backed up, and that backup includes that certificate and its private key. So it's easy for that to be misplaced or put in a wrong location where someone else could get to it. So that's another issue. So but the way they work is it's a legitimate man in the middle. Once that certificate is out there, it's issuing certificates in the name of whatever site the user is trying to go to, and then they trust it because it's issued from a PKI that's internal and trusted by them. So it's a slippery slope, and we got to be real careful on issuing those certificates because they are about as powerful as it gets. And usually the install guides don't give that the full weight that they probably should.
Just go get one of these, install it, and then you get to do all this magical TLS inspection stuff, and no HSMs, or very limited support for HSMs, and there's certainly kind of that big security thing. It's another subordinate CA. In fact, one of the challenges we have is when we work with customers and do certificate policies and practice statements, is not a TLS inspection appliance with a subordinate CA in scope of a certificate policy that mandates how CA should function. It's a different type of CA. So we call these things purpose-built certificate manufacturers that kind of remain agnostic. And sometimes we need to include them, and sometimes we don't. And I'm seeing here some comments. Nolan, you're right. Some of the TLS inspection appliances support HSM, some don't. They may only support a SafeNet or may only support an InCipher. And take some effort there. But there's definitely some consequences that should be addressed there. The other part of Heather's questions here is how are they actually working? And really, there's an interesting kind of weakness, if you will. The assumption is when you open up a browser, for instance, and you go to a website, you don't necessarily know who Wells Fargo is buying certificates from. Your browser simply says, is the issuer of the certificate that says it's Wells Fargo, do I trust that issuer? And then if I trust the issuer, I assume that they vetted Wells Fargo. Well, these inspection appliances are acting as a subordinate CA. So they are trusted for anything that they do, just like any other CA in your organization. When you open up a browser and you go to Wells Fargo, they actually on their own create a man-in-the-middle certificate. They create a fraudulent wellsfargo.com certificate, and you trust it because you trust the CA. Out the back of the appliance, they actually open the real connection to wellsfargo.com. So when your browser negotiates TLS with wellsfargo.com, in this case, you're actually talking to the certificate and the key and the identity that is sitting on your appliance. So it has the private key and can decrypt everything you're doing, then actually negotiates the new session out the back to actually send the information to the bank. So there are some challenges there, and Patrick is right. There are things like HSTS, which is a way of essentially stapling details on a website that says what certificate should you expect. There's actually two things about this, and I actually looked into this a while ago. One of the downsides is you typically specifically pin a certificate to the website. If you forget that and you renew the certificate, your website's dead, because without the ability to actually get to the website and update information, you may have limited ability to update that. The other one is it's just part of the header. So I would imagine these TLS inspection appliances may actually just be looking for the HSTS stamping in there and remove some of those details, so you would never know that the pinning is there. There are some other options that the pinning is a bad way. HSTS is a way of saying you should assume that the website is HTTPS protected. We do that with our website, but it doesn't say which certificate it should be. So, anytime that we're talking about TLS inspection and issues should definitely be addressed there. All right. Well, we're still continuing to take questions. We have Vadims here, very well known on the PSPKI side, lots of dev stuff. While those questions come in, we do have a special guest that we're going to pop over and geek out with a little bit. Joining us today, we've got Ted Shorter, and Ted is with Keyfactor and previously CSS. And it kind of has an interesting history here with PKI. I thought maybe it'd be fun to bring him on and chat a little bit about his background. So, Ted, if you're still hanging out, you can go ahead and turn your camera on and join us. I know that we have crossed paths many times at conferences and events, and I've been quite impressed by what Ted and the crew over at CSS and now Keyfactor have done. Though it looks like he's got some challenges joining in. He may be CTO of Keyfactor, but he's challenged like the rest of us to get cameras to work on demand. There he is. Hey, Ted.
Hey, you can hear me all right and everything?
Yeah, there you are. Thanks
Good.
for joining us. How are you today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Enjoying the conversation, actually. So,
great.
It's fun.
So why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. Ted Shorter, Chief Technology Officer at Keyfactor. We have actually been around in two different forms for about 17 years. So I joined a company called CSS, Certified Security Solutions, in 2003. And we did a lot of PKI services work, kind of rode the wave of installing Microsoft, Windows Server 2003 PKI in that whole wave of remote access and so forth, that those of us who are older also did. But started by really just kind of a small tool that helped folks manage the PKIs that they were running and track the certificates that they were issuing. That really snowballed into what we have today in Keyfactor, which is we don't do services really anymore on general purpose PKI. We actually partner extremely closely with Mark and the rest of PKI Solutions, but we have a software platform that makes it much easier to operate and manage both the internal PKI that you might be running, certainly very strong in integration with Microsoft, but has expanded beyond that into really all the public third-party CAs and other private PKI stacks as well. It can give full inventory, massive scale, reporting, alerting, notification, automation. Most of our customers are very large enterprises. We also have a number of customers that are using our stuff for managing certificates on IoT devices. So things like medical devices, vehicles, airplanes, and that sort of thing, again, at very large scale. So it's been a really interesting ride. It's the same sort of technology, but obviously the algorithms have changed and the use cases have changed dramatically, but it's been a lot of fun.
How did you get started in PKI? So if we go back to 2003, you joined CSS, but what was life like before that?
Out of college, I actually co-opted for the federal government at a 3-letter agency. It was NSA.
We're talking the FDA now, right?
Not FDA. No, it was NSA, and that's where I really got a lot of the crypto and security background. A lot of the PKI stuff I got actually was after that. I left the government and joined a company called Spirus that is still around in some form, but it was kind of a halfway house leaving the government. There was a private sector company that had a lot of government contracts, did a lot of the early crypto tokens for some of the really early Federal Bridge PKI stuff. And worked on smart card middleware and CSPs and PKCS 11 and stuff like that, and was then started looking for something else and wound up finding CSS, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember that. How big was CSS at the time? Were you kind of one of the founding people, or you were hired in pretty early?
When I started, there were maybe 6 or 7. But not many.
All right. What were you doing back in the day? Were you like out in the trenches, like doing PKI stuff, or they just said, "Hey, you got a big brain. We'll make you CTO."
We were willing to be at that point. This is 2003, right after the trustworthy computing memo that Gates sent out, and at a time when a lot of folks considered the phrase Microsoft security to be an oxymoron, we were willing to stand up and say, "No, we'll help with this stuff," and really saw that it was clear to me that they really did. Microsoft kind of put their money where their mouth is in terms of trustworthy computing and how they proceeded to operate since then. So we stood behind them, and in return, Microsoft walked us into a lot of very large organizations, and that's really where we started seeing the need for hey, we got these technologies like Forefront, UAG and SCCM and so forth that need certificates, but they had trouble finding folks to do them. I'm sure you're still kind of on that train now, Mark, with PKI solutions, but it served us well, but we certainly saw gaps and things that we wish were better, and kept waiting for vendors to fill that gap, or Microsoft, and finally we decided to do it ourselves.
So this may go way back, but when's the last time you broke a PKI? Like, when's the last time you went, like how far back is that?
Yeah. What was funny, actually, right when I joined, you were talking about strange, basically occurrences on, weird things you saw at customers. The one I remember was, we had a customer that called in a panic. They had deleted accidentally the CA certificate out of the machine store where the CA was running. So the CA cert was basically, you see the CA, it's running. Yeah. There's no cert in the cert store, in the machine store for the CA, and they were panicked and asked us what to do. We're like, well, don't reboot. So we went and found it and a copy of it, and the private key was still there because the delete doesn't remove the private keys. The repair store, and but that was one of the weirder ones. We also had a customer that deleted the entire security container out of the Active Directory. That was fun. But yeah, we also wind up, because we do so many things in and around Microsoft PKI. We've gotten very deep, and we have things that look like Microsoft CAs that do auto enrollment, for PKI that we're hosting in the cloud, and so we break PKI all the time, and then fix it in new ways. Yeah.
All right. So you don't necessarily have haunting memories of early days and doing a misconfiguration or a typo and having to kind of.
Oh, there's been a few of those too. Yeah. We try not to spell the customer's name wrong. That always looks bad.
That's. Well, although I always find it funny when I leave it up to the customer and they still type it wrong. their own name. I'm not giving any names of customers that have ever done that, but
no. Over beers, there's a lot of stories. I'm sure we could swap, but name names, obviously. So
exactly. So you mentioned some of these early days at 3-letter agencies. Like was PKI something that you knew of going in, and you were interested in cryptography, or you just kind of showed up and they're like, you look dumb enough to learn crypto?
It was, there's some things I can talk about, some things I can't, but a lot of the PKI, I was more a consumer of PKI at that point. I really had two main roles while I was there. I was there for about 10 years. And really about the first half of it was actually, my degree was in computer science. And there was a hiring freeze on at the time, actually. The way it worked, you joined and you actually could pick an office after you joined. So you weren't hired into a direct role. You actually were like, okay, you're in now. And the interview process was backwards because the hiring freeze, it was all, the demand was all in the other direction. So it was basically like, here's all these places that are interested. Where do I want to go? And I wound up kind of choosing being the one computer scientist in an office full of mathematicians. And because I thought it would be really hard and challenging, and it was, my job was basically trying to translate, mathematical theorems and hypotheses into code and programs that would run for, weeks or months. And I learned a lot about math and crypto. I had a minor in math, but obviously this is, postgraduate level stuff. But the nice thing was, most of these guys, you ask a question and basically within 2 minutes, you've got a one-on-one with, some of the best mathematicians in the world. It was challenging, but it was really fun, and learned a ton. And then the other half was more on computer security type things, looking for vulnerabilities in code, trying to secure vulnerabilities in code, which is obviously extremely important now. we take code assurance very seriously at Keyfactor. We have third parties test all our stuff, and
Sure.
it's you could all the best algorithms in the world, fall over when there's a bug in the implementation that lets somebody leak the key or get in through some other way. So
Yeah.
the whole it's the entire every link in the chain is important, and making sure that you focus on all of that. So it was a good background, but really most of the PKI stuff I learned was after. So certainly aware it existed.
I got you.
But it was mostly out in the private sector.
Yeah, and other than the obvious things like changing from SHA-1 to SHA-2, and key sizes from 1024. Looking back 20 years of where PKI was then and now, any kind of the thoughts ever kind of come to the top of mind of just how things have changed?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, when I started at, people were talking about, 1999 will be the year of PKI, right? 2002 will be the year of PKI. 2009 will be the year of, we never had a year of PKI. That said, it has been sort of reborn at least 3 or 4 times in new ways, right? And the publicly trusted CAs are obviously still super important, but the rise of internal, privately rooted, dedicated PKI, like I think a lot of the folks on this webinar are really responsible for operating and managing and deploying, has absolutely exploded. And there's the enterprise use cases that have still been around, remote access, all that kind of stuff. But so many times now you're seeing dedicated PKIs and private routes for certificates on airplanes and medical devices, vehicles, all those things. The other thing that I think we've seen recently is obviously there's all the, you mentioned these CAs that are embedded in these SSL man in the middle pieces. There's been a huge explosion of embedded CAs that are their own little private routes inside of all these DevOps toolchain pieces, right? So Kubernetes has their own, HashiCorp Vault has their own, there's all these little mini CAs that don't have the controls, don't have the oversight, are deployed and operated by software developers who are worried about getting the product out, not by security people, not by PKI people. And we're seeing a huge, first of all, just the numbers of certificates are exploding, but the numbers of PKIs, the number of things that organizations need to be paying attention to has gone through the roof. And people are looking for ways to, you're not going to be able to change what the product team is doing, right? Because they're on the revenue side. They're, how much money have you made for the company today? Right? When you show up today, I want to change the way you're doing, slow this down. So a lot of what we focus on are ways to still allow the developers to do everything they're doing at the speed they're doing it. That still keeps the PKI and security people sleeping at night, and it's been a challenge. There's these new things pop up all the time.
Yeah, new things all the time. Absolutely. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I appreciated you making the time to come, chat a little bit with us. It's always interesting to hear how people get started in the space and how their careers have grown. And obviously, you're in a different place now than 20 years ago, so that's a good thing.
Sure, and it was by accident. I never, at no point in my career, and I'm curious if you're the same, right? Never woke up and said, "I want to be a PKI."
Exactly.
It kind of happened.
Exactly. I think for me, it kind of goes back to there's one day where somebody goes, "Okay, well, we're going to go over a couple things," and there's this really weird thing called PKI. No one understands it, and I go, I like those weird things. So
right.
Well, excellent. Well, thanks again, Ted. We appreciate you coming on.
No, absolutely, my pleasure. Happy to join.
All right, take care.
Yep, you too.
All right. Well, great. We definitely have some more questions to get to here. I'm going to pull one that we got from email here. And I'm going to summarize this. Jake, we'll put you on the spot here. I think, Vadims, you're doing a great job over in the chat channel. I know we've got some video challenges right now. So thanks for that. Jake, this question is from James. And James had asked, in a 2-tier hierarchy with an offline route, what's the best way to change the CRL validity period for the root CRL? It's currently set to 1 week, which is far too short. And the secondary is, what is a reasonable interval for an offline CRL?
Right. So when you're building your PKI, you can actually put that in your CA policy file when you're building. If you miss that for whatever reason, and you go ahead and do the build, then you can actually go into the registry and update that value. And then what you would want to do, stop and restart the CA service and then publish that next CRL, and it will pick up that changed value. As far as picking out a healthy balance between not being over cumbersome and being doing it not very often that presents a problem. So a lot of times we find it comes down to being quarterly or twice a year is probably the most common thing that we see. I know, Mark, you said some of the clients, government type clients, are more frequent. I've seen some less frequent. I've seen some mistakes where people have set it to the life of the CA, which we don't obviously want to do. So that's usually the rule of thumb is we usually start at quarterly, and then we go from there and try to fit the need.
Yeah, exactly. So great. And of course, just as I was going to go to that, this camera flakes out again on this one. All right, so I'll save these here. I know we've got a couple more questions here. One, I think Patrick is standing by to come on to ask a question. So let me find you here, Patrick Sapansky, and you should be able to share your camera and come on when you got a second there. And then if Vadim's camera lasts, we'll come to him after this one for a couple questions that are good for him. All right. So as Patrick's coming on, well, why don't we do this one? While we're waiting for Patrick, we can have him wait. Vadims, this is a question you could answer. Montana asked, does anyone know of an open REST API that would proxy certificate requests and management operations to Microsoft certificate services?
So the answer is quite simple. No.
See, I love this guy. I love him. Can you expand on that a little bit, Vadims?
I don't know how to expand this because Microsoft added certificate enrollment web services as SOAP, like using a SOAP like transport, and no REST, because REST wasn't that popular these days. It is quite popular now, but I doubt that Microsoft will ever add this, but I think that at some point we can bring this solution.
Always looking for that next project. I know, right?
Yes, and same answer for another question from.
Well, actually, I wanted one more point on that. So probably the only thing I would add to that answer is there are potentially some third-party things natively from Microsoft. No, but it's possible through some certificate lifecycle products from Keyfactor or AppUX or some of the other ones where they might have API interfaces that are exposable as a REST API. So it's certainly not in the box. So I completely agree on that one. Vadims, do you want to answer Patrick's question? Looks like we weren't able to have him come in, but he was asking the database question. Do you want to answer that one? Do you see over here? This is I'll read it for you. Patrick had asked, is there a free exit module to copy data into a SQL database? And that's usually Vadim's expression, so it's actually a little hard to tell when his camera's locked up there. So We'll come back to that question in just a minute here. We've got a couple more questions we'll go through. Jake, why don't we throw this one over to you? Miguel was asking, what's the best way to implement enroll on behalf of process where 2 approvers are required? So that the preference is using enrollment agents, but the MMC doesn't support 2 RAs. Any thoughts on that one?
When we set the requirements for the certificate template, we can set the number of basically approvers or managers that have to approve the request. So we can do that on the template settings to require however many we want to sign off on it before it can be issued.
Yeah, I think, Miguel, if you're trying to have it where like 2 people are present in the MMC and kind of using it through that kind of, it's not going to work that way. You can certainly have it where it has multiple approvals required. Microsoft just doesn't do a great job exposing, a native workflow to do that sort of a thing. So it is going to take some construction to be able to kind of create that type of a process. Yeah. So you can probably set more things than you need in the template. It's simply a matter of how you're going to execute off of that. Right. Let's see here. So Ted did chime in here. He did say that the Keyfactor product does have REST API. So if you do have the third-party products in place, that's going to really be the only way that you're going to be able to get that REST API access available. There may be other things that you can do without REST API, but that certainly is the most prevalent way that people like to interface with that stuff. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'll take Patrick's question here. We've got some challenges with video all the way out to Latvia today. But Patrick, thanks for your question. Patrick had asked, is there a free exit module to copy data to the SQL database? I'll answer as Vadims would say, no. There isn't. There's actually kind of some interesting backstory at Microsoft. It's long been asked, why doesn't it support SQL? Why doesn't it go to SQL? And inevitably, the question is, what do you want the database to do that the existing JET database doesn't do? And yes, there are things that SQL can do around load balancing, log shipping, availability, scalability. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make Microsoft any more money. So they really don't have much incentive to do it.
There was a utility they used to ship with CM, FemCM, and then basically their certificate manager. It was just kind of just a little utility there to basically to catch up your instance. And it was great, but you can't get it unless you.
I think I still have. There was an offshoot. It wasn't the resource kit. There was a set of files, and Vadims, maybe you'll remember this, but at one point the product team, probably in the 2004, 2005, had a set of kind of post resource kit PKI things. And in there was a SQL exit module that was written. It was really written by Microsoft for Microsoft. And it was released only through Microsoft Consulting Services. And essentially it would populate the JET database, but then also essentially log ship everything to a SQL server. You ever play around with that, Vadims?
Not yet, but I have concepts on how to write exit modules in C#. So if there is enough demand on these, and guys have some spare money, we can
spare money. I like that term, spare money. Exactly. Send us your spare money. We'll do it for you. Exactly. So I still have those early prototypes of that, and we would certainly be willing to talk to somebody that was important enough to get SQL Server. We'd be happy to work with you to make that happen. An interesting aside, one of the things that we talk about in the advanced class that we have is using SMTP exit module as kind of a simulated logging method. So rather than sending everything to a SQL server, we use the SMTP exit module to send emails to an unmonitored mailbox of everything that's issued. So if we do have to rebuild or we need another set of details for our database, we've got a mailbox that we can always go to. So it's not as pretty, but it's free. So there's always options. If you've got free money, give us a call. We'd be happy to talk to you. All right. Let's see. So another question that just came in here, Scott asked, is the CRL a push or a pull process? So I think the question is, when a CRL is created, is it pushed to systems or is it pulled? Vadims, this might be one that you can't just say no to. So when a CA creates a CRL, how does it get out to systems?
How it gets out?
Yeah. So they're asking, does the CA push it to every system that needs the CRL, or is it pulled by the clients and the servers once it's published?
I don't really get the question. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. So some things translate a little easier or not. So if we look at the scenario of our CAs created a CRL, the only push or the only kind of distribution that happens is that the CA will create that CRL and place it in a known spot, the CDP location, some web server or Active Directory somewhere. And then that's the end of that's the end of the CA's job. It then turns into a pull. Any client that is examining a certificate that needs to validate a certificate is going to go out and pull it from that known location. So it's not quite a push, other than the CA putting it somewhere. I like to call that a publish, not so much of a push out to the end entity, but the end entities that are validating certificates, they're going to pull it. So I think if I had to vote, we would probably all call it a pull operation. Would that be a fair assessment? All right.
I think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the question, Scott. I've got another one. Vadims, I think you'll be able to answer this one. In email, John had sent us an email saying we're building out a new PKI and the old one is not maintained. If we build the new environment, the new PKI in the environment, and we let the old one remain, he says, I'm not clear how Active Directory will deal with two CAs in Active Directory at the same time. Will there be any issues having that in place?
So there are no issues in having multiple CAs in same AD forest because clients actually don't care which CA will process their request. The only requirement is that at least one CA in AD forest must support requested template. Further, if you have two CAs and you've got a certificate from CA1 and you can safely renew it on CA2 without any issues. So it doesn't much matter which CA will process your initial request or renewal request. So only you need that at last one CA supports requested template.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think we got time for one more question, Jake. I'll throw this your way. Mike asks, can you talk about what a CRL overlap is?
Yes, yeah, that's come up a lot lately with everyone being kind of stuck and not able to get to the office. But the overlap is the time when we say with no overlap, if our certificate were to expire on May the 30th, then clients will come and look for that certificate on May the 30th. So if we had set an overlap prior to publishing that CRL, we could set a 1 month overlap. So the clients will come back and ask for that CRL on May the 30th, but they'll continue to honor that CRL until June the 30th, at which point then it will fail. So the overlap is the time in between when the clients come and look, when we say that we're going to publish the next CRL and when it actually would expire.
Yeah. And an interesting aside to that is there are some built-in timing restrictions as far as how long that overlap can be. And they always kind of bugged me for years. I always wondered why the product team had arbitrarily limited how long the overlap could be, because what's the default hard limit that Microsoft imposes, Jake, when we talk about an overlap?
It can't be any greater than the base value.
Yeah, exactly. So if we've got like a CRL that's good for 7 days, the overlap can't be more than another 7 days beyond that. And it always seemed arbitrary, because it was like, okay, it'd be kind of cool if I could have like a 1 day CRL, but it could be good for up to 14 days in case something happens. Right. So I actually asked Vic Heller, who was the lead developer. I said, why is this arbitrarily limited? Why not allow it more? He goes, Mark, you're using it wrong. It wasn't designed for what you're doing it for. And we think of CRL overlap a lot right now as a way of kind of giving us that resiliency if we don't publish in time. And honestly, we should all be better. We should all remember when CRLs expire, and we should remember to publish them on time, because none of us forget that stuff, right?
It happens.
It happens. So the overlap is kind of a give me of, okay, it was supposed to go today, you forgot, you're a little behind, it'll keep working. But the overlap was actually designed to accommodate Active Directory latency. So if you think back early in the product days, Server 2000, Server 2003, it was not unusual for organizations to use SMTP replication. I'm going to guess a lot of people here haven't ever did that. But you used to be able to have your domain controllers replicate over small little email messages to each other or the internet. That's where things like the domain controller and domain controller authentication template came into play. They were doing secure email to each other. Well, in some cases, you could have a Active Directory convergence that was 12 hours, 24 hours, 36, 48 hours before all of your Active Directory domain controllers would be up to date. If you were using Active Directory to store your CRL and it was good for 12 hours, but it took 48 hours to get there, you could have problems. So the overlap was really designed to accommodate how long is it going to take to replicate this thing around. So we get to use it for some interesting things now, but it really wasn't designed that way. So I want to thank everyone for coming and questions. I do have a nice little thank you in way of a little early announcement that we haven't made publicly in other places. We have been working on a really interesting project, and we are just weeks away from announcing it. What we have been working on is taking and making available for the first time a online assessment program. So we have taken our PKI assessment program that we've been going on site and delivering for years. Vadims has been instrumental in translating not only my old poor code, but creating a new online portal where people will be able to perform an assessment of their own environment. And with this tool, you'll be able to come in and very quickly capture data about your PKI environment and find out areas where it needs improvement. And historically, this is something that we've had to come out and perform for customers. But with this new tool, you'll be able to either have a single ad hoc assessment or sign up for a subscription, do the data collection. Everything we do is transparent. So it's a PowerShell script, so you can see exactly what we're running. All of the output is human readable. You can see exactly what we're picking up. We're not taking passwords. We're not taking database and keys. And then you upload into this portal, and you'll be able to get a quick scorecard, as well as the high risk, medium risk, low risk items and areas of recommendations. And this is something that you'll be able to perform within a subscription basis and be able to look back over a historical basis and see what kind of details have evolved. So if you want to run one, fix some things, run another assessment, it's all basically on your demand. So you could run it every day if you wanted to. The way that we're looking at pricing this is we'll have both an a la carte model, meaning you could just buy one assessment or two assessments, or a 12-month subscription. So our initial pricing and way of context, typically when we go out and we do one of these assessments, it's $25,000. Our model for this is going to be $5,000 for a single assessment. You'll have the remediation recommendations to report, downloadable in PDF as well. A subscription is $12,500. So if you're going to do 2 or 3 assessments, the subscription will be a much cheaper way to go, and you can run it every week if you want. We're going to continue to evolve this and add new features. We're already getting a lot of feedback from existing customers, and this is going to be included in some of our service offerings as well. So if you're interested, go ahead and reach out to us. We're just at the very end of our testing stages right now, but we hope to make a public announcement and have this available online for anyone that's interested. So I'm really proud of the work that Vadims and the team has done in making this available. And I think in the next couple of weeks, we'll be able to get that out for anyone that's looking for it. So again, thanks for coming to Office Hours. If we didn't get to your question, we'll try to follow up offline, and let us know if this is something that you want us to keep doing. Let us know in chat, send us emails. I'm inclined to say yes. Jake, Vadims, what do you guys think? Do you think we should do this again?
We can make it better for Vadims' time.
Yes, Vadims. It's late night for Vadims. So as always, we appreciate him staying out. I wish I knew if he had a Red Bull equivalent. I'd send that to him as well. But Jake, I know I can always bribe you with Red Bull.
I'm cheap that way.
Excellent. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate you coming out, and we'll see you real soon. Take care.
Thank you.